There is no worse feeling than losing a game because of frame rate drops in a team fight. So I'm going to show you exactly how to optimize your computer to run League as smoothly as possible. Now, the first step is to disable all the random bloatware that starts up on your computer when you first launch it. So we're going to go Control-Alt-Delete, and we're going to look at our startup apps. If anything here looks weird, you look at the status here. If it's disabled, don't worry about it. If it's enabled and you're not sure what it does, for example, I had no idea what this is. What is this? Mobile devices. Why was this enabled for me before? All I did was I just searched online. I had a look. Okay, this is a cross-device software that helps you access calls and chats from your phone on your computer. I don't need that. Why is that running? Why is that giving me -2 FPS in League? And if you find a couple of these programs that are running in the background, you can give yourself an easy sort of 10-20 frame rate boost, especially if it's recording software like Overwolf. It's an overlay that runs in the background. I don't need that. I can disable that. Basically, you can disable anything that isn't your audio drivers. I would recommend if it's an audio driver, I'd recommend you leave it on so that your sound doesn't get messed up. And obviously, if you have an antivirus program, you don't want to disable that either. If there's any sort of you have Norton or anything like that, or Windows Defender, whatever you use. And outside of that, really everything else, obviously Vanguard, you can't disable if you want to play League, but that's really the only 3 that you need. If you want to get the best of frame rate possible, you can just absolutely disable every single other program that isn't your sound, Vanguard, and antivirus software. The next step we're going to do is we're going to go into our powerplan settings. We're going to go to Edit Powerplan. We're just going to press the Windows key and type in Edit. We'll see Edit Powerplan. We're going to click Change Advanced Power Settings. I'm going to make sure that here we have the High Performance Powerplan selected. Most of you guys will have Balanced. If you put it to High Performance, it'll make sure to kind of use the most of your graphics card and CPU. Once we've got that, we close that off and we can look at Nvidia control panel. If you have an AMD card, you might be cooked. I'm not really sure how to do this for AMD, but if you're with Nvidia, it's pretty straightforward. I would recommend just copying my settings. My settings are pretty low end. They basically just give you the best performance possible without completely sacrificing the image. The settings that you have to really be aware of here are vertical sync. Make sure VSync is off. You don't want VSync because it will cap your frame rate. The next one is preferred refresh rate. Make sure this is on highest available. So again, your frame rate doesn't get capped. Power management mode. This shouldn't matter if you selected the correct power plan, but just in case, just set this to maximum performance. Next, make sure that your OpenGL rendering GPU is set to whatever your graphics card is and not your, for example, Intel integrated graphics, in your CPU. And next, we want to look at monitor technology is important as well. Fixed refresh rate, I think, is always better. It will always give you a more consistent gameplay experience than G-Sync or AMD's V-Sync. I would suggest not using that. G-Sync is only really good if you are not even close to sort of the frame rate cap of your monitor. If you're playing AAA titles, and let's say you're playing at like 110 frame rate and your monitor is 240 hertz, then you might want to use G-Sync to smoothen the image. But if you are already kind of capping out your monitor's refresh rate, then you should just not use any of those. Just use fixed refresh. The frame rate cap, this is important as well, guys. You should try and limit your frame rate 1 FPS, 1 to 2 FPS, depending on how high of a frame rate you have below your cap. Because if you try to cap it at at the maximum, you might have ghosting. For me, for example, I had a 360 hertz monitor at one point, and when I was playing on 360 hertz, I could literally notice ghosting and screen tearing when I was on 360. But when I put this down to 358, it worked perfectly for me. So if you've got a 360 hertz monitor, cap this at 358. If you've got a 240 hertz monitor, cap this at 239. And if you've got a 60 frame rate monitor, you need to buy a new one. 144 frames monitor, 143, I would say. So 143, 239, and 358. Those are your kind of sweet spots for capping your frame rate. Outside of that, low latency mode, this one can be good as well. I personally don't use it. I know that, especially if you play FPS games, this can be pretty useful, but I just have it off. And yeah, the rest of the settings are up to you. You can keep mine if you want to, or you can, give yourself a bit better quality. Next, we can go into the actual game and change the in-game video settings. I personally use borderless. You can use full screen window. That doesn't really matter. What I'd recommend is hiding eye candy, because that should give you a little bit of a boost. And I play with everything on low. You can absolutely turn this up if you want to. I would just recommend not using very low, because if you use very low, especially for the environment, you can have a look here. The environment just looks like shit. It looks like Minecraft. So make sure that your environment is on at least low. Then it looks kind of acceptable. And shadow quality should always be off. Character quality and effects, you can turn this up to medium if you want to. But yeah, I just prefer to have everything on low. Make sure anti-aliasing is turned off. Make sure that VSync is turned off, and your frame rate is capped to whatever whatever we set earlier. It doesn't matter if it's capped to 240. You can see that my Nvidia settings always override the in-game FPS, so I'm always going to get 240 frames here. Now, the last thing you need to do is make sure that your monitor is running at the highest refresh rate possible. So we're going to right click the desktop, show more options, display settings, advanced display, and here we're going to set the highest refresh rate. Now, the reason why I have mine set to 240, even though I could have it on 360, is because I cannot consistently maintain 360 FPS throughout the entire game. Now, you can see that when I uncap my FPS, I'm getting a consistent 350, high 350s frame rate during the early game. But the problem is, once you go into the late game, your frame rate will drop substantially. And now you can see that we fast forwarded 10 minutes and we have a bunch of minions, which is basically what you're going to get in team fights. You're going to get a bunch of particle effects, things flying around left, right, and center, taking your frame rate lower. And you can see that I'm not able to actually maintain even close to the 360 refresh rate cap. And the problem is, if I was playing the whole game, the whole early game, I was playing with 360 FPS, and then it gets to team fights and I'm playing on 170, that's a massive decrease. That's like a 60% FPS drop. I'm losing 200 frames. And my eyes will be able to tell the difference, and I will feel, genuinely uncomfortable. I'll feel like I'm not able to land certain abilities in the late game that I was able to land in the early game. So that's why I kind of cap it at 240, because if it drops from 240 to 200, that's only a 40 FPS difference. That's like 20%, even under 20%. My eyes won't be able to tell the difference, and I'll just be able to play, intuitively and focus on the game and not focus on why is my PC lagging. So I would recommend that you do the same thing. If you are, for example, playing on like 160 FPS, 150 FPS in team fights, and then 200 FPS in the early game, just cap it to 144. Just have a consistent 144 FPS so that it never drops, and you know what abilities you can dodge, what abilities you can sidestep with, the frame rate that you have or the ping that you have. If you're on 60 ping, right, you have to play slightly differently to somebody who's on 5 ping, but it's still playable. You just need to get used to it. So set a frame rate, make sure that you're not getting any drops when the load gets intensive and it gets to team fights. And just stick to that refresh rate. Now, the last piece of advice is, if you use Google Chrome, make sure you don't have 5 billion tabs open, because that does use up a lot of RAM for no reason. So just if you're about to load into a game of League, maybe you're listening to some music on YouTube, just have the one tab open while you play. Your computer will thank you for it. Also, there's one more setting in here in Chrome that you need to worry about. Is it's under System. Continue running background apps when Google Chrome is closed. Make sure that this is disabled, because this might, even once you close Chrome, it might still have some stuff running. You can also enable a low spec mode on your client as well, which will improve your performance. That's the end of the video. Thanks for watching, and I hope this helped you achieve better frame rate and find consistency in game.